The Warrior God, a title that shakes the soul the moment it is spoken. From the ancient hymns of Israel to the thunder of the prophets, Yahweh was not only the shepherd of his people, but the divine warrior who fought battles that determined the fate of nations. And yet, in the quiet whispers of Scripture, there is a mystery. How can the God of love also be the God of judgment? Why does the Bible declare, "The Lord is a man of war," when so many today long only for a God of peace? Imagine the seas splitting open in the book of Exodus, chariots drowned in chaos, while Israel sings a song of victory. Picture the walls of Jericho collapsing, not by human hands, but by the unseen strength of Yahweh's power. These are not just ancient stories. They are keys that unlock a deeper truth about justice, mercy, and the final battle that every soul must face. In this video, you will discover why the warrior God rises not for conquest, but for righteousness. You will see how his sword is lifted against oppression, against injustice, and against every force that destroys the innocent. And you will understand why this vision of God, terrifying yet healing, still speaks to us today. But here is the question that demands your heart's attention. Is Yahweh's war a threat to fear or a promise to hold? Share your thoughts below, because this is a mystery that sparks both awe and controversy. And if these truths move your spirit, like this message, subscribe for more hidden revelations, and let us walk together into the story of the warrior God who fights for the world he loves. Ancient context. God of battles in the ancient world. Step into the dust and thunder of the ancient Near East, where every nation carved its destiny under the shadow of warrior gods. The Canaanites looked to Baal, the storm god who hurled lightning as weapons. The Babylonians exalted Marduk, the dragon slayer who fought chaos with cosmic power. Yet, into this world of violent pantheons rose a different vision. Yahweh, the warrior God of Israel. He was not a deity seeking power for himself, but the defender of covenant, the avenger of injustice, the voice that roared on behalf of the weak. His battles were not random storms of rage. They were judgments rooted in holiness and love. Imagine living as a shepherd on the hills of Judah, surrounded by empires larger and stronger, yet whispering hope, because your God fought not for conquest, but for righteousness. The emotional power of this truth is overwhelming. Yahweh's strength was never for himself. It was for his people, for justice, for the broken. This is the heartbeat that sets him apart from all others. And it invites you to wrestle with a profound question. If the world's gods fought for domination, what does it mean that Israel's God fought for deliverance? Reflect and share your thoughts, because this is a truth that unsettles and heals at the same time. The Exodus. Yahweh the deliverer in battle. See the waters of the Red Sea crash down like walls of judgment. Pharaoh's chariots swallowed in the chaos of divine fury, while Israel sings a hymn of victory on the other side. The Lord is a man of war. Yahweh is his name. The Exodus was not just history, it was revelation. Every wave carried a message. Yahweh fights not with swords, but with creation itself. He breaks chains. He humbles tyrants. He lifts slaves into freedom. Picture yourself standing on that shore, the spray of salt water on your face, watching an empire crumble behind you while the promise of a new land shines before you. This is the warrior God revealed not as destroyer, but as deliverer. Even now, his battle cry echoes into our struggles. The addictions that bind, the injustices that suffocate, the fears that paralyze. Yahweh still rises as warrior to part seas before us. The emotional truth is this: every battle you cannot fight alone becomes the stage where God reveals his strength. When you read Exodus, you are not reading only their story, you are reading yours. Think of the Red Seas in your life. Where have you seen impossible waters open? Comment and share your story, because these testimonies breathe hope into others who are still waiting for deliverance. Conquest and judgment, the fearsome side of divine war. Yet the story takes us into the most difficult and haunting scenes of Scripture, the conquest of Canaan. Walls fall at Jericho, cities burn, and whole nations face divine judgment. For modern ears, this is unsettling, even unbearable. How can the God of love command destruction? Here lies the paradox of the warrior God. Ancient Canaan was not innocent farmland. It was a culture steeped in idolatry, in blood sacrifices of children, in cycles of corruption and oppression. Divine war was not conquest for conquest's sake. It was judgment, a cleansing of rot that threatened to devour humanity itself. Still, the questions remain. Can justice ever come without the sword? Can holiness allow evil to stand unchallenged? These are not easy answers, but they force us to wrestle with the weight of divine righteousness. And in wrestling, we find a lesson. Judgment is terrifying because love is fierce. The same God who parts seas for the oppressed will not hesitate to strike down the powers that destroy life. Think of it in today's world. If injustice goes unpunished, is love truly love? If evil reigns unchecked, is mercy even possible? These stories are not written to glorify violence. They are mirrors to remind us that justice demands courage and love sometimes requires the sword. And yet, even in judgment, there is hope, because the warrior God does not wage war endlessly. He wages it for the sake of peace. This is the bridge into the prophets, where the vision of the day of the Lord burns with both terror and promise, drawing us deeper into the mystery of Yahweh's final battle. Prophets and the day of the Lord, Yahweh's cosmic war. When the prophets lifted their voices, they did not speak of a gentle twilight, but of a blazing dawn called the day of the Lord. Imagine the skies splitting open, mountains trembling, nations staggering under the weight of divine presence. Isaiah saw Yahweh stride forth with garments stained in crimson, not from grapes, but from the crushing of nations. Joel envisioned armies like locusts sweeping the land, yet behind the terror stood a truth. God was not fighting to destroy indiscriminately. He was waging war to uproot injustice, to bring his people into holiness, to purify the earth from corruption. The prophets were like heralds of thunder, warning that the warrior God does not remain silent forever. In a world where evil often seems to win, these visions pulse with hope. Judgment is not the end, it is the doorway to restoration. Picture how this applies to your life. When chaos surrounds you, when injustice presses down, the voice of the prophet still declares that God will rise in power. The same God who judged empires promises to shatter the chains that hold your soul captive. Let this truth sink deep and ask yourself, do we long for God's day of justice, or do we fear it? Comment your thoughts, because this question has divided hearts for centuries. The Psalms and apocalyptic visions, Yahweh's heavenly army. The Psalms sing not only of quiet pastures, but of storms and battlefields. They show Yahweh riding on the wings of the wind, his voice like thunder, his arrows flashing as lightning. Every image pulses with raw power, reminding Israel that their God was no passive bystander, but the commander of heaven's armies. This imagery explodes again in the apocalyptic visions of Daniel and Revelation, where the warrior God leads celestial hosts against the monstrous powers of chaos. Daniel sees beasts rise from the sea, but then comes the Ancient of Days, seated in judgment, and the Son of Man given everlasting dominion. Revelation unveils the Lamb, who is also the Lion, the one who conquers not by violence, but by sacrificial love, yet still rides forth as King of Kings with armies of heaven behind him. These visions captivate because they pull back the veil. What we see on earth is only a shadow of the cosmic struggle raging in the unseen, and the warrior God is not losing, he is moving toward victory. Think of your battles, the ones you cannot name aloud. These scriptures whisper that you are not alone. Heaven's armies march with you. This is why so many believers across history have drawn strength from the Psalms in their darkest nights. They are more than songs. They are battle cries wrapped in melody. Jesus and the warrior God, from sword to cross. Here lies the most breathtaking twist in the story. The warrior God stepped onto the battlefield himself, not with sword in hand, but with nails driven into his flesh. In Jesus, Yahweh revealed a new kind of victory, one that shattered sin, death, and the grave by surrendering to the cross. What looked like defeat was the ultimate triumph. The lion became the lamb, yet the lamb was never weak. He was the warrior, disguised in vulnerability, conquering enemies no human army could touch. This is the paradox that heals the soul. Divine war was transformed into divine redemption. Picture Calvary, not as a tragic end, but as the ultimate battleground where heaven's love collided with hell's fury, and the outcome was never in doubt. Resurrection crowned the victory. The lesson is piercingly personal. Your struggles are not meaningless. Your wounds can become weapons in God's hands. The cross teaches that even suffering, when surrendered, becomes a victory cry. Today, when you face battles that feel impossible, remember the warrior God who fights through sacrifice, who turns weakness into strength, who writes triumph into the very places of your pain. Reflect on this mystery. Would we even recognize victory if it did not look like the cross? Share your perspective, because this paradox divides opinions but also unites hearts in awe. And as we step from the shadow of the cross into the vision of the final judgment, the story of the warrior God carries us toward his ultimate promise, that evil will not have the last word. Misunderstandings and misuses, when people weaponize God. Through the centuries, the image of the warrior God has often been twisted into something Yahweh never intended. Crusaders marched under the cross, believing they were carrying out holy war. But what they unleashed was blood and conquest, born of human pride, not divine justice. Empires justified colonization by claiming God was on their side, yet what they spread was oppression, not liberation. Even today, voices rise declaring that God endorses their violence, their hatred, their wars. But this is not the warrior God of Scripture. The Bible never paints Yahweh as a deity of reckless destruction. He fights for righteousness, not for power plays. Misunderstandings come when we confuse divine judgment with human ambition. The true battle is never about land, gold, or empire. It is about truth, justice, and the healing of creation. Think about it. When people weaponize God, they are not defending him. They are exploiting his name for their gain. And this misuse leaves scars that still ache in the memory of nations. Yet even here a lesson emerges. Beware of any claim that turns God into a mascot for human violence. The warrior God cannot be domesticated into political slogans. He is holy, set apart, fighting battles of the spirit far deeper than our earthly quarrels. The healing insight is this: if you want to see the true warrior God, look not at the armies of men, but at the one who defends the orphan, the widow, the stranger. That is where his sword falls. And so we must ask ourselves, are we aligning with his justice, or merely cloaking our desires in his name? Share your thoughts, because this is not just history, it is a challenge for today's world. Personal application. What does it mean today? The story of the warrior God is not locked in dusty scrolls or ancient battlefields. It speaks into your life right now. When Scripture says Yahweh fights for his people, it means your battles are never yours alone. The enemies may not be Pharaoh's chariots or Jericho's walls, but they are real. Fear that paralyzes, addictions that enslave, injustices that crush. The Bible calls this spiritual warfare, and the warrior God still stands at the center of it. Ephesians declares, "We wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities and powers." That means your struggle is cosmic, but so is your defender. Picture your darkest night, when hope seemed gone. What if, unseen, the God of heaven was already at war on your behalf? This is more than comfort. It is transformation. The lesson is clear. When you lean on him, your weakness becomes the very place where his power shines. Think of someone you know who carried an unbearable burden and yet found strength beyond themselves. That is the warrior God at work. And maybe, in your own story, there are red seas waiting to part, walls ready to fall, chains about to break. Do not see your battle as hopeless. See it as the stage where Yahweh will reveal his glory. The emotional truth is this: he does not fight to destroy you. He fights to heal you, to lift you, to bring you into freedom. And here lies the invitation. Will you let him fight for you? Comment your journey, because every testimony is a torch that lights the path for another soul in the dark. And as we move forward, the narrative points us to the ultimate conclusion. The warrior God's fight is not finished until the final victory of peace fills all creation. They told us God must be gentle, and he is. But tonight we have walked with the warrior God, the Yahweh of Scripture, who parts seas, breaks chains, topples idols, and stands between the powerless and the storm. If your heart is pounding, it's because something ancient has awakened inside you, a holy memory that you were made for courage, made for covenant, made to stand in a story bigger than fear. The Bible does not hide this truth. From the Song of Moses to the thunder of the prophets, from the Psalms that roar like waterfalls to the vision of Revelation where the lion-lamb reigns, the story is clear. Divine judgment is not random rage, it is the final defense of goodness. And the astonishing plot twist is Jesus, who fights the greatest war not with steel, but with sacrifice. That is why this message heals. The cross is where justice and mercy finally hold hands, where the sword of holiness strikes the chains on our wrists instead of our throats. If you've ever felt that your battles were too dark, too complicated, too personal, tonight the Scripture speaks straight to you. Yahweh is not distant. He is not bored. He is not indifferent. He is the God who enters the battlefield you keep trying to hide. Think of the Red Sea that still lives in your life, the habit that drowns joy, the memory that repeats like a broken tape, the accusation that steals sleep. Spiritual warfare is not fantasy. It is the pulse beneath your everyday decisions, the quiet contest for your attention, your integrity, your hope. The warrior God is not recruiting you into violence. He is inviting you into wholeness. He teaches you to fight by laying down what poisons you, by picking up what heals you, by standing where truth stands even when it costs. This is what the day of the Lord means in real life. Not a calendar date to fear, but a decisive moment when light walks into the room and everyone can finally see. In that light, false loves lose their shine, and real love grows strong roots. If you've been waiting for a sign to begin again, take this breath. Begin again. The God who brought down Jericho can bring down the walls you built to survive. The God who silenced Pharaoh can quiet the voice that says you'll never change. The God who raised Jesus can raise the parts of you that have been asleep for years. I know some of you feel torn by the words divine judgment. You've seen religion used like a weapon, and the wounds still whisper. Let today be the day we separate the counterfeit from the real. When Yahweh roars, it is not to crush the weak. It is to crush whatever crushes them. Justice is what love looks like in public. Mercy is what justice looks like in the mirror. And Christ is where both meet and refuse to let go. So let the warrior God reframe your courage. Courage is not shouting, it is showing up. Courage is not rage, it is responsibility. Courage is not us versus them. It is truth versus the lie that any person is disposable. If you want a practical next step, take this with you. Choose one chain, one habit, one silent agreement with fear, and break it. Replace it with a rhythm that carries heaven's weight. Pray before you scroll. Bless before you speak. Fast from what muddies your mind. Feed on what makes your soul bright. This is not self-help. This is covenant training. You are not a spectator. You are a citizen of the kingdom. Some will ask, if God is a warrior, why do battles still rage? Because love is patient, because people are free, and because God is writing a longer story than our news cycle. The promise is not that we will never struggle. The promise is that struggle will never have the last word. Revelation does not end with a graveyard, it ends with a city, a river, a tree whose leaves are for the healing of nations. The final image of divine judgment is not smoke and ash, it is the world made right. That is why this vision carries power for mental health, relationships, purpose, and perseverance. When you know the ending, you can carry the middle. When you know the warrior God is near, you can keep your heart soft without being naive, strong without becoming hard, bold without losing tenderness. This is the kind of strength our families need, the kind our communities crave, the kind our timelines cannot manufacture. This is why the gospel is still good news. Now I want to hear the fire in you. What do you do with the paradox that God is love and God is judge? Do you believe justice and mercy can live in the same heart? Have you ever seen a Red Sea moment in your own story? Something no human plan could explain? Drop your perspective in the comments. Start a brave, respectful conversation. If you disagree, say so with honor. If you agree, add the insight that only your life can supply. This channel is not an echo chamber. It's a table where seekers, skeptics, and saints can wrestle with Scripture and walk away stronger. Your words could be the bridge someone else needs tonight. If this message gave your spirit oxygen, if it helped you understand the warrior God, Yahweh, divine judgment, the day of the Lord, spiritual warfare, Jesus the Lion and the Lamb, tap like so it travels further. Hit subscribe and ring the bell so you don't miss the next deep dive on faith, history, and hope. And if this work lights a lamp in your home, there's a quiet way to keep the flame bright. Share this video with someone who needs a miracle. Leave a thoughtful comment and consider supporting the channel in whatever simple, meaningful way feels right to you. Every gesture, every watch, every share, every word helps me craft more studies, more stories, more resources that point hearts back to God. If you've found peace here on heavy days, or clarity when the path felt crowded, your steady presence is a priceless gift. Thank you, with all my heart, for walking this journey with me. Before we go, take 1 minute to pray like a warrior who remembers the battle is the Lord's. Yahweh, divine warrior, fight what I cannot fight, judge what must be judged within me, guard what must be guarded around me, cut off the lies, lift up the truth, and lead me in the way everlasting. Let that be the anthem over your week. When fear knocks, answer with faith. When shame whispers, answer with grace. When temptation hunts, answer with Scripture. And when you forget, remember the cross, where victory already began. You are not abandoned. You are not outnumbered. The captain of your salvation walks beside you. We end where every true story ends, in hope, not cheap hope, not borrowed hope, but blood-bought hope that outlives every midnight. The warrior God is not done. He is making all things new, beginning in the quiet places you think no one sees. Keep going, keep trusting, keep your heart awake, and let your life become a living headline that reads, "Love wins, truth stands, mercy triumphs." If this spoke to you, say so below, and tell me which part lit a spark. Your testimony is a torch someone else will use to find their way home. Until the next chapter, walk in strength, walk in tenderness, and remember whose armor you wear.